Hi friends! Okay, this is a little video I wanted to put together for you that I guess I'm just going to call How to Make Friends with Your Lettering Tools. So it's a classic scenario that we go to the store and we buy all of the brush lettering tools. We look at what our favorite artists are using and we buy them and we bring them home, and they're not cheap. And then we feel frustrated when we try to letter something and it just doesn't look the way that it looks when our favorite artist uses that same tool. And so although there's a lot of things that come into play when a lettering artist is lettering, the main one being practice, there is also an element of just knowing your tools and learning how to play with them that I think could be really helpful for the very, very beginning lettering artist. And so this right here is just a lettering sketchbook, which is the first thing that I want to talk to you about. It's great to have a casual lettering sketchbook that you can just fill with whatever and anything and everything without a lot of pressure. So this is not my first lettering sketchbook. This is just my most recent one that I started in 2018. And as you can see, I don't finish everything in it. I rewrite the same thing several times sometimes. Not everything is a quote, and sometimes I start things and I don't love how they're going. Sometimes the ink bleeds through, and it just is not a big deal because this is a sketchbook. So this activity, first and foremost, is about taking down the pressure. We're not working on a big finished product. We are practicing and playing around with the tools that we have. So open up your sketchbook, whatever it might be, even if that, for starters, is just some printer paper, some smooth printer paper that you have on hand. That works fine too. With these brush markers that have these pretty furry tips, I don't know that furry is the right word, but they have these tips that are all soft and brushy. You don't want to use a rough texture, so don't use watercolor paper for this. Don't use a really gritty paper. Find a paper that feels pretty smooth when you touch it with your hand. So these are Tombow markers, and I might do something like this where I push down and then maybe one below where I come up. So this activity in general of bringing your brush marker onto the page, let me bring it a little closer and see if I can show you better. This activity of, let me grab my next color, the downstroke with the pressure and the upstroke with the light pulling up, like you're almost pulling up against the page. Just this activity of pressing and pulling is good for building your understanding of your tool and your muscle memory of the downstroke where you push and the upstroke where you pull. But also it is a fun way to get to know the way this particular marker works on the page. So these have a really big tip, but some markers might have a tip that is this big, but the tip might be softer or harder, and you don't know until you play. And so I always recommend playing with your markers. And so I start with the rainbow, fun, easy way to play. So I'm going to just make a rainbow with this color and pushing down and pulling up. Notice how I'm overlapping them. I was just curious what would happen if they overlapped, so sometimes I'll overlap my lines to get a feel for that. Pushing down and pulling up. When you do your upstroke, if you really think about it as pulling up away from the page, it helps to get that thin line. And then you can go in and do about a zillion things. Like you could do crisscrosses and then push down and see how it gets super inky. And these markers specifically, these water-based Tombows, have this really inky texture, and so I'm practicing my upstroke and my downstroke, but I'm also getting a feel for how inky is this pen. How does it come down onto the page? What does it look like when I intersect two different colors? What happens when when I try to make a pattern. Like just getting a feel for your markers is really fun. And this is also a really, really soothing, mindful activity. So in addition to doing your upstrokes and your downstrokes, do some other things. Do some X's, do some mountains. Like, hey, if you were 5 and this was the first time you picked up these markers, what might you do with them to like get a feel for how they work? So circles, mountains, squiggles, some loop-de-loops are really good. Let's get a different color for loop-de-loops. Just get a feel for your tool and have fun while you're at it. Pushing down, lifting up, pushing down, lifting up, pushing down, lifting up. The Tombow has this complexity of color that's really cool, and you don't get to know it unless you take the time to play a little bit. These are some other markers that I have that are brush markers. These are from Nuvo, and until I played with these, I had no idea what they would be like. But one thing about these is that they're very light tones. They're these soft, let me see if I can get it to show. These soft tips, they're really easy to kind of like ding up actually. And also they show up with like, their tone is a little bit less saturated, I would say, or a little bit less intense. And this purple actually is showing up darker than I expected it to, which I wouldn't have known had I not played with it. But you can see like the transition from thick to thin looks a little bit different on this. So getting to know them, like getting to really, really, really know how they behave with your paper, with your hand pressure, with your size of writing, and all of that is really good. Another way to play is like just write letters, but don't try to put the pressure of like these cursive-y brush letters, like just write normal letters. So when I'm going downstroke, I push, and when I'm going across, I kind of do that light stroke. And maybe I'll do a heart. So I'm just kind of getting a feel. See this color? It is actually lighter than you might expect it. Maybe I'll do a heart big and see what happens. If you're getting real crazy, get out some water and see how it interacts with water. But we won't do that in this lesson because that gets a little bit over complicated. This is the Sharpie brush marker, and honestly, I got these a long time ago. It may be dried out, but this is part of the experiment, is to see what's happening. And so let's do a downstroke and an upstroke. These have like that dried out look, which actually can be a good effect for the right situation. They might make really great little marks because they'll feel really textury because they're drying out on me. Not all is lost. Whew, these smell like a Sharpie, friends. You can try some loop-de-loops. These I find are much harder to control, just so you know, but I never would have known that had I not played with them. Maybe some of these. But yeah, these are certainly to me one of the harder ones to control. They are no bigger than the Tombow, but they are softer tipped. That tip is super duper duper soft. Also, just so you know, and so you don't think this doesn't apply to you if you're an iPad user, friends, it's the same thing. Let me zoom out a little bit because my iPad's rather large. You can get a fresh sheet in Procreate. You can grab any color marker or a palette if you want to play with colors, and then pull out this is a new set I got called JKS Modern Calligraphy. And the first thing I'm going to do with it before I try to letter with it is get to know these markers. So I'll come over here, I'll pick a random size, and I'll go upstroke where I'm lifting, downstroke. This is like called Firefly. I'm just gonna play around with it and see, like, could I make a letter with that? What do I think? I might try like a Y just to see. And then I'll say, okay, that's that one. Maybe I do a whole new layer. and start again with the next brush, which is fading marker. And let's go down a little bit in size and try. See, this one has a lot of like dynamic to its shape, and so that's going to take some practice. To get an upstroke and a downstroke with this that looks reasonable, it's going to take a lot of practice. But look at how cool of a pattern I can make with this brush. Like just like this, I'm already inspired to like do a bunch of mark making. This would be a really cool mark making set because it's got so much texture on the edges of the brush. And then, you know, bit by bit, we'll just play with all of our markers until we feel like we understand them, because that understanding your tools is half the battle when it comes to creating things. And it's also the fun part because there's no pressure. It's simply just for the fun of it. It's just to see what we're capable of and what this tool can do and what it has to offer. Look at that edge on that brush. So if I was doing a really clean word, it wouldn't work. But like if I was doing like the word edgy, watch this. That could be really fun, right? Maybe not like that, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect because I am just having fun. And I really think that you cannot underestimate the value of just having some fun with your tools. So hopefully that is useful to you. I would love to see what you do. I would love for you to pull out all of those tools and just go to town, see what your tools are capable of, see how many rainbows you can make, see how many shapes you can think of, and just implementing those simple strategies of pushing down on the downstroke, lifting on the upstroke. What can you do and how much can you build your skill and enjoy yourself all at the same time? All right, friends, thank you so much. I will be back with more later.